Hello, everyone. Today I am joined with another person whom I did not even have on the thread to say that I was interviewing them. But it's okay because they have completed more than 10 years just as I. Initially on the sidelines, watching and playtesting for quite a few things to eventually finding very broken things for other people. And recently coming into an author all of his own, working on not one, but 3 games.
Yeah, one of those is like actually close to being released too. It's the one I'm working on with you.
Yep, we're getting very close to the end of that. But because of that, I have learned very much what he is capable of as a Mugen character creator and asset creator, among other things. With me today is a person whom you all may know as Evil Homer. He's also been known as 5TSD, like there's 5 T's. There was another one that had something to do with Gorilla, which name escapes me.
Killer Kong.
Killer Kong. Yes, that's what you also may know him as. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Had a pretty good day today. Woke up crisp and chipper. Ready for this, I suppose?
That's good. Well, there's the first thing that we all would like to be ready for is to know how you discovered Mugen. Where did it begin for you?
Oh boy. So I know everybody pities everybody that had Windows 98. So I'll start with that. That's probably the most depressing part of the story. Back when I was younger, way younger, like more than 12, 13 years ago, I didn't have a lot of money. My family wasn't very rich. We still aren't. We're pretty poor. Basically, we had a Windows 98 computer and the internet and some old game consoles. So how I found Mugen was I would just search stuff on the internet, and eventually I found what was a very, very bad Mugen full game. And this Mugen full game inspired me to look into what the hell Mugen was. Because even as a young kid, I wanted to do something with it because it looked pretty fun. And the first thing I downloaded was the cracked roster Run Mugen. And from there, I kind of fell in love with it. I didn't really start programming and doing stuff in it until like late Win Mugen, early 1.0 era. Because that was around when I started to get into high school and started actually being able to read CNS. Because I started by doing edits. The first things ever released were edits. And that was like just before I went into high school, I think. But past that, like that's the earliest I remember of Mugen was being really young, and it was in a corner of the basement in our house because we couldn't fit the computer upstairs, so we just had to do it in the basement. And it was in like this kind of dark, pretty well lit by a lamp corner, and it just had the computer and the tower there. That's pretty much how I found it. It was just browsing the internet really young, discovering it on my own, and thinking, maybe I'll do something with this one day, and then eventually following through with that when I got older.
Well, that's a fair starting place for a lot of us. Quite a few people started off doing edits before trying their first foray into a character. And for you, that began not too long ago, but pretty long ago. Why don't you tell us about the first character you made?
It's for April Fools in 2015 or 2014. It was one of those two. I don't remember the exact date because I've released 2 characters for April Fools back to back through those years, which is something that's rare because I've always had plans but never followed through since I've been busy. But those are 2 years when I was particularly active with that thing. The first one was F-Zero, which was I was initially making a stupid edit of Rio. It was a commemoration edit because my laptop had gotten stolen a couple years before it came out, and I was working on a really dumb Terry that had a whole lot of really funny things. He had like Coola's freeze execution super. He had like was it Rage's level 2 super from fucking Power Instinct Match or Melee that he had? There was all sorts of other weird stuff he had, but he was lost and my laptop got stolen when somebody broke into my window and took it. Like that December 2011 or 2012. It was like before Christmas, but I got a new laptop and I was really bored and I was thinking I want to do something again. And I thought I lost like everything on this old Terry. I don't want to go remake Terry again. So I just took like the next KOF character that I thought was pretty easy to make a stupid moveset out of, which was Rio, because Mouser had just released a Rio that was pretty easy to crack into and edit without breaking anything, because I was initially going to use like Koopa Coots or something, but it was pretty tightly coded and I didn't want to finagle with it because it would have been annoying. So I took Mouser's Rio and completely butchered every possible gameplay aspect of him because I wanted to make something really silly and fun. So he has all this weird stuff like a random tripping variable because Super Smash Bros. Brawl is a really good video game. He has a full screen DP, a not full screen DP, random fireball. He has ST Akuma's air fireball because I wanted to give him at least one move you could say that was banned on this character. There's all sorts of stuff. He shoots ghosts of himself. It was weird.
I see. So the gameplay, as you said, was a mix of a ton of things. Was there any particular reason why you made the gameplay how it currently is?
It was mostly as a joke. I wanted to make something pretty memorable for April Fools, since I'd been enjoying a lot of really funny April Fools releases in the past, with my favorite still being Tamez is how you say his name? He had the Mario 2 level that actually scrolled down from the waterfall like in Mario 2 until you couldn't see anybody. That was really funny. I wanted to make something sort of even close to as memorable as that, where it's like it sticks with you because of how weird and funny it is, and like something really quirky. So Mouser's gameplay kind of provided a good template to work off of and add random weird variables to and just silly stuff. I wanted to make the combos entertaining, the moveset funny. Stuff that's really stupid looking but practical at the same time. Like you can max cancel out of the tripping. If you're in max mode, you can DP out of it. And it's a low, so it's really fast. It's random though, so you can't really tell. But if your reactions are really good, it does work.
Wow. Okay. Well, what did you like the most about this abomination you brought to life?
Probably the EX mode that had what I call the best Falcon kick, which was the light kick version of his Hien, Shimpukyak. Basically hits at least 20 times. I don't know if it hits more or less, but I just know it hits a lot and does it does okay damage. It does like really small damage per hit, but you can like max cancel out of it at any time. There's all sorts of weird stuff you could do with it. I remember having a combo on my channel with it, I think in the preview. I'd have to pull that up and look at it again to really document what it was, and I don't feel like doing that. But he has all sorts of weird stuff. The pinball super was really fun to code, where he bounced around the walls. I looked at somebody else's and was like, I can do that. So I kind of looked at it, see how they did it, and recreated it on my own and made it work a bit different. There's all sorts of stuff.
So what would you consider the biggest challenge you faced while doing this?
Probably getting the max cancels to feel and look right, work right. Getting the character feel to not feel really crappy in spite of being a really joke weird edit. Like I had to make sure the frame data felt fine. Like making sure the Rambu, which is filled with explosions and fire effects, didn't look silly or feel too long. Mm-hmm. It actually ended up being the opposite. People thought it looked really cool. And I didn't intend for it to, but it just did. So whatever, I'll take it. Stuff like balance, because that was a bit important. I didn't want to make him like Rarakuma, because that kind of thing is only funny once, and it's because Potts did it. Somebody that was notorious for being really careful about how his moves work. Making something like Rarakuma was really funny, but I don't think it would have been funny for somebody like me who had like no context in that.
Yeah, that's fair. Joke characters they're kind of a spectrum, whereas on one side you have ones that are really funny, then on the other ones you have some that try too hard so they're not funny or entertaining. And you're just like, why did I waste my bandwidth on this?
They have to have enough content to be interesting and silly, but at the same time, they have to have some sort of fundamental draw to playing them. I think Robo-Urt, which came out after, has a bit more of a draw than F-Zero, though I think they're both quite fun, but Robo-Urt has a bit more thought put into certain things.
Yeah, the difference is, well, like night and not quite night and day, but like night and sunrise, I guess. Yeah. So looking back, what you know now, which I'm sure is quite a bit, what would you tell your past self?
I would probably tell them that they should keep thinking they can do it, because naturally when I first started, I didn't think I could. And I almost really got discouraged and quit, but after a lot of effort, I would ask for help from people like Koopakoot and Vans, and they would help me a lot. And Zilla as well. When I would just throw them random coding questions, like any time in the day, really. And I would just tell my younger self not to be afraid to ask those questions, because it's important to reach out and ask people that know more than you. Even if you're worried about the answer you're going to get, it's better to be wrong and admit you're wrong and understand how you can do something than to try and do it on your own if you absolutely are completely lost. Because having it explained to you, even if it doesn't make sense at first, just take the time to process it and try and implement it on your own and then see how it works. So I just tell my younger self to not be afraid to ask those kinds of questions, because it took me a while to build up that courage to do that, but it paid off.
I'd say so, because I recall, since I've now known you for roughly 10 years, one of the first things you did was not ask me for help, but instead give me ideas for stuff that you felt I should bring to life, which is why there is a Marvel 2 Ryu that even exists from me.
Yeah, the only good one in M.U.G.E.N, surprisingly. But it's nice. It was a good thing. It was a really weird request, because it was like, let's do Ryu? Who would ask for that? But there wasn't a good one, and I figured that's the kind of character that should be in there. He's like the template for fighting games. Why wouldn't he be converted from pretty much everything he's in to some extent?
Yes, and oddly enough, because of that, I actually owe a great deal to all of the things I've branched off into from your silly-ass request from 10 years ago.
Back when I was really young. We were both really young, damn.
Well, yeah.
Oh, kids on the internet.
Yeah. So, do you recall what the M.U.G.E.N community was like all those years ago? Do you feel like it's changed at all?
Oh man, okay, so one of the biggest differences, I think, is the idea of open source code has changed so much since when I started, because I wasn't on MFG at first. I was on smaller M.U.G.E.N forums. I would occasionally browse MFG. I didn't join it till a bit later because I was really nervous. Open source code and stuff like that, I wasn't around during the time where it was really taboo, but I kind of came in between, I would say, when I started like actually looking at community posts. Because nowadays, M.U.G.E.N is a really open source thing. Like a lot of people are pretty fine with having their code looked at and used and, built from. But back when I started, we were in like the middle of that process where it was like, no, I don't want you to do that. But then people were starting to understand that the strength of this engine by building on each other's work and documenting everything to be readable, at least for like tutorial purposes.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like I had come in around the time when Vans had started publishing his really early KOF stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe not around when it was brand new, but maybe a year or two later, maybe, where he started publishing stuff like where he would talk about the math used in KOF, like that velocity stuff. That was a huge step for like KOF things, or like just the coders help forums and all that. All those things were like kind of coming into play and using other characters as bases for that.
Yeah.
So I'd say the biggest thing that I've noticed that's changed has been just the attitude towards open source code.
Yeah, I believe that you kind of came into the fold right around the time when that radical change was like working its way in. And I've yet to really speak to anybody who's come from the background of someone who was in the middle when they came into the picture. Because for them, it probably was equally confusing where you saw people arguing that this thing shouldn't happen and people arguing for it, and neither side was presenting that helpful of an argument.
Yeah, because again, I had no context to like what M.U.G.E.N code theft was at the time. I always thought it was just like, it was weird that people would do that, but I'm sure there was reasons. Even if they don't make sense now, I'm sure there was. But I came in at a time where it was like, what the hell? It's like when you walk in a party that just went wrong and you just see all these things happening and you're like, geez, did I get here late or what?
Yeah, that's a good summation of what happened. So again, as I've done with previous interviews, we know that you have asked for help. So there's no point in asking if you ever have. So instead, I'm going to ask you, what was it like when you did? Like the first person you asked for help, how did that go?
Okay, I'm trying to remember who it was, and I don't want to get it wrong. But it was either Koopa or you. But the earliest memory I have of asking was, can you help me clean up these effects from KOF 98 UM?
Pretty sure that was not me.
Yeah, it was. I probably asked Koopa something earlier. He was one of the first people that really like answered my questions like that, because he was the first one I reached out to. Because I had been testing for him before and I started doing stuff on my own. But I remember him, it was really awkward at first, but he gave me a lot of really good tips. And it felt really good after I asked it because I got it off my chest and I was presented with feasible solutions to the problem that I had. So I would say asking questions at first, it felt really awkward. But like after you've done it once or twice or 3 times, and as long as you're not asking the same question over and over again, you'll probably get different answers and really interesting solutions to problems you didn't really think about as much. And then you can start applying that skill that you've gotten from that problem-solving idea and start applying it to other things that you're coding.
That's true, which is a good segue for the next question. Say someone came to you in the way that you came to so many others back in the day, asking how to get into M.U.G.E.N. What would be the advice you give them if they wanted to get started?
Since that actually happened to me way back when, oh my god, I think somebody was doing a Lilith edit that they ended up releasing that was a pretty decent edit. So then I did say I actually offered at first, and then they were like, I'll keep it in mind, and they contacted me again. The first thing I said was, read the documentation, but also ask any questions you have about it to somebody like me or anybody else you know that might know about this stuff. And when they came to me, I basically just suggested, look at how other characters do things and like try and take it apart piece by piece. Outside of like me giving you a solution to a problem, another really great thing to do is take a character that you think is really complicated and try and look at how it uses things like variables, hit def coding, math, all of that. Try and look at it and understand it. I wouldn't recommend trying to look at stuff like binary variable shifting, all that crazy stuff, but like something simple like a variable juggle system or width and height detection, etc. Just look at that and see how it's done. And then as you do that and as you edit it and tinker it with it and figure out how it works, you can start applying it to other things you do. Because the very first thing I did was edits, and that carried very well into making characters and making stuff for M.U.G.E.N.
Yeah, I would say so. Like a lot of the techniques that people do, it like varies from person to person. So when some people seek overly complicated stuff, they'll think, oh, well, that's the only way to do it, and that's far from the truth. Like I saw binary shifting and stuff from people like Vans and Jesuszilla and some of those other people, and I was like, but I've done it other ways and my stuff works just as good. Does that mean that it's a problem, or am I a problem, or does it not matter? The truth is, it doesn't really matter as long as it doesn't fucking break M.U.G.E.N.
Yeah, as long as it works, it's the most important thing. It works and it's testable. And don't worry about how other people read your code unless you're doing something that you intend as an open source release. it can be as messy as it needs to be. You can clean it up later if you want, but when I make stuff for M.U.G.E.N, I make it for my own sake too. So naturally you organize it in a way that makes sense to you, and try not to worry too much about it being readable unless you're basically doing it for like open source purposes.
Yeah. So with all that being said, do you have any last words to our audience?
Enjoy what you do, and if you don't enjoy it, take a break. One of the biggest things I did with M.U.G.E.N was I burnt myself out on it really hard, and it was a big problem. It was during like early 1.0, mid 1.0. If you're feeling burnt out and discouraged, just take a break, play other things. Hell, play fighting games, play platformers, whatever you want to play, video games, or do other things. Go out and do stuff. If you ever get frustrated, I'd recommend that, because it's better for your mental health, and you'll probably come back with more clarity if you ever get discouraged doing anything in M.U.G.E.N. And the other big thing is do what you want, and don't listen to people unless they're giving you like good feedback. If they're telling you that, oh, you're doing something that's overdone, don't do it. If you genuinely want to do it, I would recommend just doing it. Nobody's really gonna fault you for doing that, and I don't think you should discourage yourself because of how other people, approach it. Just always be willing to take that feedback and just apply yourself to it. And if you feel burnt out, take a break. It's always good for the health.
That's a good note to end on, because the thing is, even if you retread someone else's ground, there might be something slightly different that either makes it its own charm, or even if it doesn't quite pan out in the eyes of the community, at least it's something you learn from, and that's what's going to take you to making something that is unheard of and undone.
Yeah, like really silly edits of DOS characters.
Oh, what a world that would be if that was actually something that happened. I don't even know
How crazy.
what that would be like.
Wild.
I don't think anyone would do it. It's insane. Seems like a terrible waste of time.
Yeah, 50 sprites? Jeez, that's a little limiting.
Yeah, I mean, why do that? But thank you for joining me on this interview. I hope to have it out in a timely fashion.
It'll be fine.